She was mocked and ridiculed because she was much heavier than every other woman in her village. She was called every insulting name imaginable. Some people called her a hippopotamus, while others compared her to a warthog. No man was willing to marry her because of her body and her appearance. This is the story of a village girl named Tulinagwe. I warmly invite you to watch this story until the very end. My name is Miller, and I'm in Dodoma. Please let me know where you're watching this story from by leaving a comment below. I also kindly ask you to click the like button, then click subscribe to support the channel. There was once a young woman named Tulinagwe. She lived with her elderly grandmother, Grandmother Mwanaheri, in a small old house on the edge of a village. Tulinagwe was extremely overweight. She had a very large body. Her face was not considered attractive. Because of this, many people constantly mocked her. Little children called her Mama Elephant. Others called her Cargo Truck. Even some of the village men openly laughed at her right in front of her. But what hurt Tulinagwe the most was not her body. It was the way people made her feel worthless. At every wedding in the village, every celebration, every community gathering, the women looked at her with pity. Some whispered, "Even if she reaches 50 years old, she'll never get married." And the men would laugh. Many nights, Tulinagwe cried alone. She would ask herself, "What did I do wrong to be born like this?" But Grandmother Mwanaheri comforted her every single day. "Don't be afraid, my child. God does not judge by appearance. People may laugh at you today, but tomorrow your life can completely change." But Tulinagwe was exhausted. She even gathered the courage to approach two men in the village, asking them if they would consider courting her. The first man's name was Simon. That day, Tulinagwe dressed herself beautifully. She even bought a brand new floral dress. She found Simon at the village well. In a shy voice, she said, "Simon, I love you." At first, Simon remained silent. Then he burst into loud laughter. Everyone nearby turned to look. "You love me?" He laughed until tears rolled down his face. "Everyone, come and listen to this." The entire crowd at the well burst into laughter. Tulinagwe wished the ground would open up and swallow her. She ran home crying. That night she couldn't eat. From that moment on, her heart slowly began to break. But her suffering did not end there. Several months later, she tried again with another man named Chuma. This time, she wrote him a heartfelt love letter. Every word came straight from her heart. But the next day, the young men of the village read her letter aloud in public. They sat beneath a huge tree laughing. "I, Tulinagwe, love you with all my heart." They kept repeating those words while laughing so hard that some of them fell to the ground. Tulinagwe happened to pass by and heard everything. She stopped. Her heart shattered completely. That night she told her grandmother, "Grandmother, I don't want love anymore. I don't want anything to do with men. I'm tired of being laughed at." Her grandmother embraced her, but tears were running down her own cheeks as well, because she knew how deeply her granddaughter was suffering. Yet the village never stopped mocking her. Every single day brought a new insult. Among the men who mocked her the most was a young man named Ludo. Ludo was the most handsome young man in the entire village. He was tall, light-skinned, well-built, charming and smooth-spoken. Almost every girl in the village wanted him. But Ludo was extremely arrogant. He believed that only beautiful women deserved his love. Whenever he saw Tulinagwe, he laughed at her. One day, while talking with his friends, he said, I'd rather marry a sack of potatoes than marry Tulinagwe. Everyone burst into laughter. Tulinagwe was standing behind them. She heard every single word. She quietly walked back home in tears. From that day forward, she completely gave up on love. She stopped dressing up. She stopped attending celebrations. She didn't even want to talk to men anymore. But what the village didn't know was that Tulinagwe was hiding a huge secret. A secret that even some of her own relatives didn't know. Her late parents had left behind large plots of land in the city, 2 rental houses, a bank account containing a great deal of money. However, all of those assets were under the care of a lawyer in the city until Tulinagwe reached the age of 25. No one in the village knew the truth. Until one evening, a light rain was falling over the village. Grandmother Mwanaheri was sitting outside, sorting maize. Inside the house, Tulinagwe was wrapped in a sheet, watching the firewood burn slowly. She was completely unhappy. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When the door was opened, a very well-dressed man appeared. He was wearing a black coat, shiny shoes, and carrying a large briefcase in his hand. "Greetings to you." "Greetings," Grandmother Mwanaheri replied, looking at him suspiciously. The man introduced himself. "My name is Lawyer Mbise. I have come from the city. I have come regarding the inheritance left by Tulinagwe's late parents." Grandmother Mwanaheri was shocked. Her heartbeat began to race. Then he said, "Tulinagwe's late father was a very wealthy man before he died." Tulinagwe was surprised. She had never been told that. She had always believed that her parents were ordinary people. The lawyer continued, "They left a great deal of property in her name. They wanted her to reach the age of 25 before she was given everything." Tulinagwe felt her hands begin to tremble. "What property?" she asked in a low voice. The lawyer said, 2 houses in the city, plots of land, a large building materials shop, and a large amount of money in the bank. Tulinagwe remained completely stunned. Grandmother Mwanaheri began to cry. "Oh God! So, my child, you did not leave my granddaughter in poverty after all." But the lawyer said, "Tomorrow, I want you to come to the city so that we can complete some documents." That night, Tulinagwe did not sleep. She thought about her entire life. For the very first time, she felt that perhaps her life could change. But she did not know that this news was the beginning of even greater problems. 2 days later, news of the inheritance began spreading through the village like wildfire. The entire village began talking. "They say Tulinagwe is rich. Could it really be true? That fat woman?" People could not believe it. But as the days went by, when they saw cars from the city arriving at her home, the lawyer returning again, and Tulinagwe beginning to travel to the city frequently, they started to believe it. And that was when everything suddenly began to change. The men who used to laugh at her started greeting her. Some helped her carry water. Others pretended to be kind. But no one changed as suddenly as Ludo. One day, Tulinagwe was leaving the shop. She was carrying a bag of sugar, when she suddenly heard a voice behind her. "Tulinagwe." She turned around. She saw Ludo. The same man who had once said, "I would rather marry a sack of potatoes." Today, He was standing in front of her with a smile on his face. Tulinagwe was startled. Ludo slowly walked towards her. "Can I help you?" Tulinagwe did not answer. She thought perhaps he was making fun of her again. But Ludo took the bag of sugar from her hand. "Why do you seem to be avoiding me these days?" Tulinagwe nearly stumbled in surprise. "Me?" "Yes, you. You know, for some time, I have really wanted to talk to you." Tulinagwe's heart began to race. She had never heard a handsome man like Ludo speak to her so gently. Ludo continued, "There is something I have been hiding for a long time." "What is it?" Ludo took a deep breath. Then he said, "I love you, Tulinagwe." The world seemed to stop. Tulinagwe simply stared at him. She felt as though she were dreaming. "Me?" "Yes, you." Ludo held her hand. "I have never loved any woman the way I love you." Tears began flowing from Tulinagwe's eyes. For the first time in her life, a man was telling her that he loved her. And not just any man, but the man every woman in the village desired. But a short distance away, two women were standing and watching them. One of them asked in surprise, "Has Ludo lost his mind?" The other replied, "No, he has seen the money." They both laughed quietly. But Tulinagwe did not notice that. All she saw was her dream beginning to come true. That night, she returned home filled with great happiness. She told her grandmother everything. But Grandmother Mwanaheri was not happy. Her expression changed. "Which Ludo?" "Ludo, Msetchu's son." Grandmother Mwanaheri remained silent for a moment. Then she said, "Isn't that the young man who used to insult you?" Tulinagwe quickly replied, "Perhaps he has changed, Grandmother." "My child, men do not change that suddenly." But Tulinagwe did not want to listen. "Grandmother, I have suffered throughout my entire life. Please do not ruin my happiness." Grandmother Mwanaheri looked at her sadly. Her heart told her that something terrible was coming, but she did not know just how terrible it would be. From that day onward, Ludo became very close to Tulinagwe. Every morning, he came to their home to carry firewood, help Grandmother Mwanaheri fetch water, and even sweep the yard. The entire village was left speechless. Many women were deeply hurt. They had pursued Ludo for many years without success. But now, he followed Tulinagwe everywhere, like a bee around a flower. One day, some women were drawing water from the village well. One of them said angrily, "So, we beautiful women have lost to that woman who is as fat as a hippopotamus?" Another woman said, "That is not love. It is money." But another woman spoke quietly. "Even if it is because of money, it still hurts. She is loved by the man every girl in this village dreams of." They all laughed bitterly. As the days went by, Tulinagwe began to change. She started taking better care of herself again. She began dressing nicely. She started smiling again. Everyone in the village noticed the difference. Whenever she walked with Ludo, people would turn and stare at them. Some looked on in amazement, some with jealousy, others with mockery. But Tulinagwe no longer cared. She believed, "At last, I too have found someone who loves me." One evening, Ludo took Tulinagwe to a large river just outside the village. A gentle breeze was blowing. Ludo held her hand. "Tulinagwe?" "Yes?" "I want to marry you." Tulinagwe felt her legs grow weak. Tears began to fill her eyes. "Are you sure?" Ludo embraced her. "I would be the biggest fool alive if I ever let you go." Those words went straight into Tulinagwe's heart. That night, she could not sleep because she was overwhelmed with happiness. But elsewhere, Grandmother Mwanaheri could not sleep either. Her heart was troubled. She had no peace at all. The following day, Ludo officially came to Tulinagwe's home with his parents to ask for her hand in marriage. The entire village gathered to witness the occasion. People could hardly believe it. The women whispered among themselves, "Does this really mean he's going to marry her?" The men shook their heads in disbelief. One of them said, "This world is full of mysteries." But while the discussions were still going on, Grandmother Mwanaheri called Ludo aside. They stood behind the house. She looked him straight in the eyes. "Listen to me carefully, young man." Ludo remained silent. "My granddaughter has suffered enough. Don't you dare play with her feelings." Ludo pretended to be humble. "Grandmother, I love her with all my heart." Grandmother Mwanaheri stepped closer. "Don't lie to me. I remember very well how you used to laugh at her." Ludo forced a smile. "I was a foolish young man, Grandmother." But Grandmother Mwanaheri was not convinced. "My son, some men love money more than they love people." Ludo's expression changed for a brief moment, but he quickly smiled again. "I will protect her for the rest of my life." Grandmother Mwanaheri said nothing. She simply looked at him. Deep in her heart, she prayed, "My God, please protect my granddaughter." Several weeks later, the wedding was arranged. It became the biggest wedding the village had ever witnessed. People came from neighbouring villages just to see it. Most of them did not come because they were happy. They came because they were curious. Some wanted to see with their own eyes. Will a handsome man like Ludo really marry Tulinagwe? On the wedding day, Tulinagwe was beautifully dressed. For the first time in her life, she truly felt beautiful. But outside, people were still talking about her. One woman said, "She must have bewitched him." Another replied, "It's impossible for a man like Ludo to love a woman like her." Meanwhile, Ludo smiled in front of everyone. He acted like a man deeply in love. Everyone who saw them together was left speechless. After the wedding, Ludo insisted that they move to the city. "We shouldn't continue living here. We're city people now." Tulinagwe quickly agreed. She was willing to do anything for her husband. But one night before they left, Grandmother Mwanaheri called her granddaughter aside. She handed her a small cloth bag. Inside were several title deeds, a set of small keys. "These are some of the important documents for your properties." Tulinagwe asked, "But won't Ludo be managing everything?" Grandmother Mwanaheri held her hand tightly. "Never hand everything over to a man, my child." "But he's my husband." "Don't let love make you blind." But Tulinagwe laughed. "Grandmother, you're worrying too much." Grandmother Mwanaheri wished she could say more, but she remained silent. She could see that her granddaughter was deeply blinded by love. 2 days later, Tulinagwe and Ludo left the village for the city. The journey to the city was the first time Tulinagwe truly felt like a queen. She sat by the car window, gazing at tall buildings, paved roads, busy traffic, bright city lights. Her heart overflowed with happiness. She looked at Ludo with deep affection. "Thank you for taking me away from that village life." Ludo smiled. "My wife deserves a better life." Those words were like honey to Tulinagwe's ears. They moved into a very large house in the city. The house had expensive sofas, a large television, a large refrigerator, and many luxurious rooms. On the very first day, Tulinagwe cried tears of joy. She believed that her life had finally changed, but little by little, she began to notice strange things. Whenever they went out, Ludo never wanted to hold her hand. Whenever they walked together, he always walked ahead of her. Sometimes he would say, "You wait here, I'll be right back." And whenever they met other people, he never introduced her by saying, "This is my wife." Instead, he would say, "This is someone very close to me," or "We do business together." At first, Tulinagwe didn't pay much attention to it. But as the days went by, it began to hurt her deeply. One day, they met some of Ludo's friends at a restaurant. There were several beautiful, elegantly dressed women there. Tulinagwe was wearing a brand new dress that Ludo had bought for her. She was very happy. But as soon as they arrived, Ludo whispered, "Don't talk too much today, okay?" Tulinagwe looked at him in surprise. Why? These city people have their own way of doing things. When they sat down, not a single person knew that Tulinagwe was Ludo's wife. Even worse, the women quietly mocked her. One of them whispered, "Doesn't she look like one of the restaurant ladies?" They all laughed. Tulinagwe heard every word, but she pretended she hadn't. That night, after they returned home, she gently asked, "Why didn't you tell them that I'm your wife?" Ludo suddenly became irritated. "Does everyone have to know?" "No, I was just asking." "Stop bothering me, Tulinagwe. It's enough that I know you're my wife. How does it benefit anyone else if they know? You might as well wear a sign on your head that says, 'I'm Ludo's wife.'" It was the first time Ludo had ever shouted at her like that. Tulinagwe fell silent, but a strange pain began to grow inside her heart. As the months passed, Ludo changed even more. He became obsessed with pleasure and entertainment. Nightclubs, alcohol, spontaneous trips, new friends. Money was being spent rapidly. Whenever Tulinagwe asked about it, Ludo would say, "We've lived a hard life for so long. Now it's time to enjoy ourselves. Just let me have my fun." Tulinagwe loved him so deeply that she never wanted to argue with him. Little by little, Ludo began asking to take control of all their property. "My wife, I'm the man of this house. The man is the head of the family. I'm the one who should manage all of our businesses." He persuaded her to transfer the bank accounts, sign several important documents, put some of the businesses under his management. Tulinagwe agreed to everything because she believed, "He's my husband. He would never hurt me." But one day, Grandmother Mwanaheri called her. "My child, are you doing well?" "I'm fine, Grandmother." "And how is that young man?" Tulinagwe laughed shyly. "Grandmother, you still don't trust him?" But her grandmother replied, My heart is still not at peace. Tulinagwe laughed again. Oh, grandmother, he's my husband. There's nothing wrong with him. He's perfectly fine. Grandmother Mwanaheri fell silent with sadness. One evening, Tulinagwe decided to follow Ludo without him knowing. For many days, he had been coming home very late at night. She followed him to a large, luxurious bar where he often went to drink. And what she saw there shattered her heart into pieces. Ludo was sitting with a very beautiful, slender city woman. They were laughing. They were drinking. At times, Ludo was even holding her hand. Tulinagwe felt as though her heart had stopped beating. But what hurt her the most were the words she heard Ludo say. I could never be seen in public with a woman like her. I only married her because of her money. Everyone burst into laughter. Tulinagwe stood outside the doorway, trembling. Tears streamed down her face. She felt as though the whole world was spinning around her. For the first time, she remembered her grandmother's words. Don't let love make you blind. Tulinagwe remained standing outside the bar for a long time. Her legs were shaking. Tears continued to flow down her cheeks without her even trying to wipe them away. Inside, she could still hear Ludo and the woman laughing together. Every burst of laughter felt like a knife piercing her heart. She refused to believe what she had heard. She kept telling herself, maybe I didn't hear him correctly. Maybe he was just joking. But at that very moment, Ludo wrapped his arms around the woman in front of everyone. And that was the moment Tulinagwe's heart was completely broken. She quietly walked away. That night, she returned home alone. She did not turn on the lights. She sat in the dark living room, silently crying until dawn. The next morning, Ludo came home singing, as if nothing had happened. When he found Tulinagwe sitting there in silence, he looked slightly surprised. What's wrong with you? Tulinagwe looked at him with red, tear-filled eyes. I saw you yesterday. Ludo remained silent for a few seconds. But instead of being afraid, he laughed. So, you've decided to spy on me now? Tulinagwe was stunned. Ludo, is it true that you told that woman you only married me because of my money? Ludo sat down on the sofa without the slightest sign of shame. What else did you expect me to say? Those words hurt Tulinagwe more than anything else. So, you've never loved me? Ludo took a deep breath. Then, in a cold voice, he said, Tulinagwe, let's be honest. You're not the kind of woman a man like me would ever choose. Just look at your body. Look at how unattractive your face is. Then look at me. I'm handsome. How could I possibly love a woman who looks like you? You don't even have the sense to think about that. Tears streamed down her face. But I loved you. That's your problem. You're the one who loved me. I have never loved you, and I never will. A heavy silence filled the house. Then Ludo stood up. Don't pretend you don't know why men never wanted you. No man dreams of being with a woman like you. Only a madman could ever love someone like you. Tulinagwe burst into tears, but Ludo had no compassion left. I only put up with everything because I wanted a good life. Now I'm tired. After saying that, he walked away. The door slammed shut behind him. Tulinagwe remained on the floor, crying like a little child. In the weeks that followed, Ludo began disappearing more and more often. Sometimes he spent the night away from home. He would disappear for 2 days. He wouldn't answer his phone. Whenever Tulinagwe complained, he shouted at her. One day he even said, If you keep bothering me, I'll leave for good. Tulinagwe became frightened. She thought, if I lose him, I'll be all alone again. That was her greatest weakness. She was terrified of becoming the woman everyone used to laugh at in the village. So she continued to endure everything. A few months later, Tulinagwe began noticing problems in their businesses. The rent from their rental houses was no longer coming in properly. Money kept disappearing. Some of the bank accounts were nearly empty. When she asked Ludo about it, he replied, "That's business. There are good times and bad times." But one day, Tulinagwe went to the bank. There, she received news that nearly made her collapse. Almost all of the money had been transferred out of the accounts. Some of the properties had already been sold. Tulinagwe began to tremble. This can't be happening. But it was true. Ludo had transferred almost everything into his own name. She rushed home as fast as she could. But when she arrived, the house was empty. Ludo's wardrobe had no clothes in it. His shoes were gone. His phone could not be reached. On the table, there was a single envelope. With trembling hands, Tulinagwe opened it. Inside was only one sheet of paper. "I'm sorry, Tulinagwe. I tried to endure it, but I can't spend the rest of my life with a woman I don't love. You can never be the kind of woman I want. I've taken my share of what I wanted, and I'm starting a new life with a woman who is my equal. Don't look for me." The letter slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. Tulinagwe let out a loud scream. A scream of pain, a scream of heartbreak, a scream of regret. That night, she sat alone in the large, silent house. There was no laughter, music, happiness. There was only pain. That was when she realized she hadn't just lost her husband. She had lost her wealth, her businesses, and the entire life her parents had left for her. All because of a love that had blinded her. After Ludo disappeared, Tulinagwe's life became a living hell. Every corner of that large house reminded her of her pain. One night, she sat alone on the floor. There wasn't even electricity anymore. She began thinking back to the life she had in the village. How deeply she had loved Ludo. How she had refused to listen to her grandmother's advice. At that moment, regret completely overwhelmed her. She picked up her phone and called her grandmother. When the call was answered, Tulinagwe couldn't even speak. She could only cry. Grandmother Mwanaheri became alarmed. "My child, what has happened to you?" In a broken voice, Tulinagwe said, "Grandmother, he left me. He stole everything from me. He took all my property and all my money." Grandmother Mwanaheri fell silent. Tears began rolling down her cheeks as well. But she did not blame her. Instead, she gently said, "Come back home, my child." Those words broke Tulinagwe's heart even more, because she remembered how proudly she had left the village. A few days later, Tulinagwe packed her small travel bag. Then she left. There was no luxurious car anymore. She boarded an ordinary bus. The entire journey she sat by the window crying. The passengers around her looked at her with sympathy, but none of them knew the pain she was carrying in her heart. When she arrived in the village, the news spread very quickly. "Tulinagwe is back! The rich woman? Why's she come back alone?" People came out of their houses to look at her. She looked completely different. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight. Her face was filled with sadness, and her eyes looked tired and lifeless. The women who had once envied her now whispered with sympathy. But others secretly laughed. We knew it would end like this. That young man only wanted her money. That's city love for you. Tulinagwe quietly walked to her grandmother's house. When she arrived, Grandmother Mwanaheri was sitting outside, just as she always did. The moment she saw her granddaughter, she quickly stood up. As Tulinagwe came closer, she fell to her knees and burst into tears. I'm sorry, Grandmother. I'm so sorry. Grandmother Mwanaheri said nothing. She simply embraced her tightly, and the two of them cried together for a very long time. That night, they sat outside beside the firewood fire. Silence filled the air. Then Tulinagwe spoke sadly. Grandmother, why has my life turned out like this? Grandmother Mwanaheri looked at her lovingly. Because you longed so much to be loved that you forgot to love yourself. Those words pierced straight through Tulinagwe's heart. Her grandmother continued, a woman should never allow herself to be humiliated simply because she is afraid of being alone. Tulinagwe cried once again because she knew it was true. Never allow yourself to be disrespected just because you want to be loved. People who love money more than human dignity never stay for long. Loving yourself is far more important than trying to prove your worth to others. Not everyone who says, I love you, has good intentions. And finally, the person who truly loves you will never be ashamed to stand beside you in public. Several months passed. Tulinagwe slowly began to heal from the pain she had endured. Instead of spending every day crying, she decided to start a new life. With Grandmother Mwanaheri's guidance, she began growing vegetables and selling them at the local market. Every day, she woke up very early and worked harder than anyone else in the village. As time went by, her business began to flourish. 1 year later, Tulinagwe had opened a large grocery store in the village. 2 years later, she owned several shops and a large agricultural produce warehouse. The same people who had once mocked her now respected her. Meanwhile, Ludo's life was falling apart day by day. The woman he had been with left him after the money ran out. The businesses he had started collapsed. The friends who had been enjoying his money abandoned him. His cars were sold. The house he had been renting was locked after he failed to pay the rent. Before long, Ludo found himself without a job, without money, and with no one willing to help him. One day, he returned to the village, exhausted, dirty, and dressed in worn-out clothes. As he walked through the marketplace, he saw Tulinagwe, but she was no longer the Tulinagwe he once knew. Standing before him was a confident woman, a successful business owner, and someone respected by everyone in the village. Standing beside her was a wealthy and respectable man named Mbaraka. Mbaraka was a successful businessman from the city who fell in love with Tulinagwe because of her kind heart, not because of her wealth. A short time later, Mbaraka married Tulinagwe in a magnificent and luxurious wedding. The entire village witnessed the celebration. This time, no one laughed at her. Instead, everyone congratulated her. Ludo stood at a distance, watching. Tears began to roll down his cheeks. He remembered how he had looked down on her. He remembered how he had stolen everything from her. He remembered telling her that no man could ever love her. But now, he was watching a man far better than himself marry her and love her sincerely. When Tulinagwe saw him, she neither mocked nor humiliated him. She simply looked at him and said, "Someone who truly loves you doesn't judge your appearance. They look at your heart." Ludo lowered his head in shame. That day, he finally realized that he had lost the best woman who had ever come into his life. Never judge or look down on someone because of their appearance. Wealth can disappear, beauty can fade, but a kind heart and good character are treasures that last forever.